The first 3 episodes of the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover recently aired, but one thing we knew we were going to get after the 3rd episode was the tie-in comic, which came with a couple new stories that directly connect to the crossover that apparently take place between episode 1 and episode 2. Now, I haven't actually read the comic because I don't live anywhere near any Walmarts, but also I can't find it online, so it's not going to be a review of the tie-in comic in that way, but I think I have gathered all the information that we either learned from the comic or just pictures that were shared online, showing certain big events from the comic book that I wanted to talk about in this video, because through this comic book, not only did we get the big death for a certain character, but also multiple universes, including TV show universes, seemingly one comic book universe, maybe even an entire comic book multiverse that was added to the Arrowverse that I wanted to break down in this video. With that in mind, let's begin, and I'll begin with the death of a character, because I definitely have some strong opinions about this one. The person who dies in this comic is Wally West, aka Kid Flash. As we see in this panel here, which is an image I found online somewhere, there's this seemingly, I don't remember his name, but this evil version of Pariah shooting something at Barry Allen, and Wally West jumps in front of it and dies. I have so many problems with this, not only because killing off Wally in a tie-in comic makes absolutely no sense, and it's a huge disservice to the character, but also narratively, it just doesn't make any sense to kill off Wally at this point, because with all this build-up to Barry dying, while yes, there is the fact that the whole multiverse died, and Barry was one of the only 9 beings who didn't, this seems like it's a death that will stick, because it's not a part of the destruction of the multiverse. He's just shot by this, light beam or something, and that just doesn't make any sense narratively. Not to mention that the fact that a speedster died because he wasn't able to dodge something, that doesn't make any sense either. I think that if Wally screamed, "Oh no, Barry," as we see here, Barry heard this, he could have just stopped time, as he does several times with Flash time, and then dodged this. So a speedster dying to something like this also makes no sense. I think a speedster basically always only can die when he's running so fast that it kills him, like we saw with the Earth 90 version of Barry, because other than that, it just doesn't make any sense for speedsters to really ever die, other than something crazy like that. Other than that, however, there's a couple of other things that come from the actual TV shows that show that Wally maybe not be dead, or just this doesn't make any sense to take place between part 1 and part 2, as in part 2 and part 3, Barry, Iris, Caitlin, Cisco, or even Sarah and Ray, all the people that Wally are either related to or are very close with, none of them mentioned his death at all. None of them seemed to care at all. I mean, Barry was more occupied with Oliver's death. Iris cared more about Barry's upcoming death. Nobody cared that Wally died at all. So I really don't think that this makes any sense. Not to mention that Wally's been confirmed to return in an episode of The Flash Season 6. After the crossover, none of this adds up at all. It makes me think that if this tie-in comic is even canon, it really reminds me of Freedom Fighters of the Ray, another thing that was supposed to tie into a crossover that just didn't make any sense canonically. I think that Wally's death here, if this is supposed to take place between part 1 and 2, which it definitely seems like it is, just doesn't make any sense because they never acknowledge it, but also Wally's coming back after the crossover. Now, the fact that Wally's death just canonically doesn't make any sense could mean that literally nothing in this tie-in comic is canon at all, but I think that Wally's death could be explained if it ends up being explained. But also, I don't know if this is true, but I'm guessing there are certain other things in other non-connected Wally West storylines, or not connected to the Wally West storyline, that could be canon while that storyline isn't. Regardless, though, I'm going to go over everything, and I'm going to consider it all as canon, even though the Kid Flash death specifically just doesn't make any sense. So first things first, in no specific order, I'm just going to go all over everything that I learned or that I was able to gather from this tie-in comic. So first of all, apparently the Earth 96 version of Lex Luthor appears, so I'm guessing some character and in some storyline went to that universe. The Earth 96 version of Lex Luthor was originally played by Gene Hackman, but was later replaced by Kevin Spacey in Superman Returns. There's a big reason he didn't appear in the crossover, and that's because Kevin Spacey is kind of like this disgraced actor at this point, even a disgraced person, but also he would have been too expensive to bring back for the crossover, and Gene Hackman also probably could not have been brought back for the crossover, so they didn't bring it back for the crossover, they just put him in the comic, which is something that they did a lot for this comic book, and probably issue 2. They brought back characters who they couldn't get the actors back for, and they put them in this tie-in comic instead. This goes for Kid Flash, this probably goes for Lex Luthor from Earth 96 as well, but it also goes, I think, for Wonder Woman. This is something pretty huge that the comic did, and that's integrate the 1970s. This is actually something pretty huge that the comic did that is not something I expected. There was a rumor going around that Linda Carter's Wonder Woman would appear in the crossover, and while that doesn't seem to be the case at all, she is appearing in the tie-in comic, or at least she did. This is probably, this kind of can be considered the first, debut of Wonder Woman in the Arrowverse, even though she has appeared before in the aforementioned 1975 Wonder Woman TV show, but also in Smallville and some tie-in comics. But in terms of the current year of the Arrowverse, ever since the Arrowverse began, this is the first appearance of Wonder Woman. But this Wonder Woman, like I said, is played by Linda Carter, an actress who I'm guessing they could have brought back for the crossover if they wanted to, but they didn't. I'm guessing because you see in this panel, Wonder Woman looks like she's the same age as she was in 1975 or 1979, the year that the TV show ended. I'm guessing that's why they didn't bring back Linda Carter, because Wonder Woman as a character typically is like a god or a demigod or something, so she ages a lot slower than human beings. So the 40 years that have gone since the debut of her show, she wouldn't really have visibly aged that much, so bringing back Linda Carter just wouldn't have worked, especially since the de-aging technology that they have now is way too expensive for a CW show, so that's why they put this in the comic book and not in the actual crossover. Now again, I haven't read the comic yet, so I don't know the full context of this, but it does seem like Wonder Woman's universe is about to be destroyed, and she's leaping into action trying to protect it, but obviously, much like literally everybody else in the multiverse so far, she didn't succeed. Now this universe is Earth 76, which is a number that I'm guessing is named after 1976, the year that Wonder Woman Season 2 came out, because the show started in 1975. You would have expected them to name the show to Earth 75, or maybe Earth 79, the year the show ended, much like it did with Earth 203, which is the Birds of Prey universe. The reason they didn't go for Earth 75 is because there already was an Earth 75 in the Arrowverse. That's the universe that we saw in Part 2 of the Crisis, where Lex Luthor went there and killed Superman. That universe was named after issue 75 of Superman from the 90s, the issue where Superman died, so they couldn't do Earth 75 for Wonder Woman. I think they could have just done 195 or something, or maybe a 975, or maybe even 1975 or something. Just naming it Earth 76 is a little bit weird because that just is one of the years the TV show aired in. Regardless, though, that obviously doesn't matter in the slightest. It's just a little weird to me they didn't go for a number that more connects to the year the show either started or ended, or maybe the year that Wonder Woman was created, which I'm pretty sure was 1940 or something. So there's a panel from the comic where Pariah is sent to Earth N52 right before it's destroyed. Let me know in the comments down below if this is true, but I'm guessing in the comic we saw some stories surrounding Pariah where he's sent from universe to universe right before it's destroyed, and you watch as it being destroyed before sent away, just like we saw in the comics, the Crisis on Infinite Earths comics with Pariah. That was Pariah's main role in the beginning of the comics, and I'm guessing that's what we saw here as well. One of the universes he's sent to is Earth N52, very clearly inspired by the New 52 comics, but there's no way it's the actual comics. Now, these characters all have the exact same designs that they have in the New 52, with Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Cyborg, and Aquaman also being the main founding members, or the founding members of the Justice League, and that's the exact same thing you see here. However, this can't be the original comics of the New 52 because of extra multiversal beings, like the Anti-Monitor and the Monitor being different, as they would not be different. They would be the exact same beings, since they're outside of the multiverse. Every single universe would have the same Marno and the same Mobius, but it's pretty clear that the New 52 doesn't, and the New 52 had a very different versions of those characters, so they're a part of their own multiverse or outside of the Arrowverse's continuity, so this cannot be the New 52 comics. Not to mention that if this takes place in 2019, all of these characters, including the lineup of the Justice League, look drastically different. The only one who doesn't really look drastically different is the Flash, who has a very similar design to the New 52, but literally everybody else has a very different design to what they had in 2011 to 2000 and I think it was 16 or something. Anyway, regardless, I think this is probably a universe inspired by the New 52, quite possibly the DC animated universe. The DC animated movie universe began in 2013 with Flashpoint, which created their own version of the New 52 universe. There is really no contradicting elements that could say that this universe isn't the one that Pariah goes to, which is Earth N52, except for the design of Wonder Woman, as she is clearly inspired by the actual comic book version of Wonder Woman from the New 52, while the one in the movies looks slightly different, where her costume has an added blue design to the top. Now, this isn't exactly the most contradicting element, and I think that either Wonder Woman changed her design, or maybe something else that can mean that this is that same universe. So it's either the DC animated movie universe or a completely new universe that's also just inspired by the New 52, because that absolutely cannot be the actual New 52 comics, because that would practically mean that literally everything is in the Arrowverse, but also there are just too many contradicting elements to say that that is the actual New 52 and current comics of DC. There's also in the comic Earth F, which is apparently where the new 1940s Superman cartoons are from, named after Fleischer. I'm pretty sure his name is the guy who created these cartoons, and that's Earth F. This means that this is now officially the oldest thing in the Arrowverse. Previously, it was Batman coming out in 1966, but this coming out over 20 years before that is a lot older. There's also Earth D, where apparently the Justice Alliance of America is from, which doesn't really add anything, so I'm not going to talk about it here, but also I have no idea what they look like. Again, I haven't read the comic, but there's also a couple panels of Felicity, as this comic definitely focuses on Felicity quite a lot. These panels show Felicity reacting to the fact that Oliver is dead, and screaming at Marnovu, and talking to Harbinger and things, asking them how they could lie to her, or not tell her about things. It all is mostly reasonable, because her husband just died, but I'm so glad we didn't see this in the crossover, because it would have literally dragged down the crossover so much, like it did for Heroes Join Forces, like it did for Crisis on Earth X, like it did for the second part of Elseworlds. Felicity is always especially annoying during the crossovers, and I'm so glad she isn't a part of this one, because while her reaction to Oliver's death is absolutely reasonable, it still would have been annoying. Even when she's reasonable, she can very much be annoying, and I think that boils down from the acting from Emily Bear Rickards, because while she's a very good comedic actress, dramatically she just doesn't work at all, at least in those dramatic scenes. With that in mind, though, that's basically everything I had to talk about for this comic book. Let me know other things that I missed maybe in the Time comic, because I haven't read it, which I've probably said like 20 times at this point, but let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.